Genesis.
Hey, what's up? It's Genesis and I hope you're doing well. Today, I'm going to show you techniques you can use to improve your MIDI grooves. Although I'm going to be using hip-hop drums primarily as my examples, specifically my drum bomb sample pack, link in the description below, these tips can work with many other genres. Although I use Ableton, every technique can be applicable to other DAWs of your choice if you manage to find alternatives. And I know that the majority of my viewers here at the moment are here for dubstep content, so don't be afraid to try these techniques for your trench or rhythm flows, and don't be afraid to also use these techniques for other genres. Alright, enough waffling, let's get into it. If you have your drum pattern written out already, one of the easiest ways to make your groove feel human is through MIDI grids and randomization. Let's take this cheesy drum groove for example. MIDI grids and MIDI randomization shift your MIDI notes from the mathematically perfect time divisions to a more relaxed and loose feel. There are specific grids called grooves that align your MIDI notes to a predefined grid. These files end in .agr and you can easily find them by typing that on the search bar. All you need to do is find a groove file, drag and drop it to one of your MIDI clips, and that's it. If you click on this wavy button, you can unfurl the groove pool, which is all the grooves present in your project file. Here, you can change the amount of quantization to the grid on the groove file, as well as the velocity quantization to the grid, as each file also has built-in velocities, as well as overall randomness. You can bake these settings to your MIDI clip by pressing the commit button down here. And with that all said and done, here's the before and after. With these settings and groove file at the moment, it's pretty subtle. You can use other groove files as well as adjust these parameters and the global amount in order to get stronger effects. For a different example, I'll be using the Claves groove file on the green MIDI clip and I'll bake the groove into the clip. Again, here's the before and after. Another way to add imperfection to a groove is with signal offsetting. The premise of this is to purposefully offset the MIDI signal or the output signal away from the mathematically perfect grid. And there are multiple ways to do this. One way to do this is by manually shifting each note. And depending on how long your MIDI clip is, or if it loops or not, this can get very meticulous. Let's say for example, I will take the hi-hats and I want to shift them later in time just a little bit. I can zoom in real quick and slightly drag it to the right, but if you do experience some snapping, you can hold Alt to temporarily disable snapping while you're dragging some notes. I'll do the same for this other hi-hat layer, but just a little bit later. And this is what that will sound like. I can offset even more elements. Let's say this main kick, except for the start of each bar, earlier by a smidge, and the snare also earlier by a smidge. And we'll take some of these percussive blips and adjust the velocities as well. I want to get quieter than louder over time. And what I can do is, whilst I have some notes selected, I'll hold Control and click, hold and drag, and this will create a line that will adjust all of the selected MIDI notes' velocities. So now each of these notes will gradually get louder. I'll do the same here, shift it forward a bit, hold Control, click drag to create a ramp, and there we go. And after a bit of manual signal offsetting, here's a before and after. My favorite way to offset is by using a delay plugin. Let's put this on the hi-hat for example. And in order to turn this from a regular delay to a signal offsetter is to put the draw out all the way to max, feedback to 0, turn off any coloring such as filters or distortions, change the delay time mode from sync to milliseconds, And then these millisecond knobs turn into your signal offset delay in milliseconds. So for example, if I set this knob to 40 milliseconds, then the hi-hat will be shifted later in time by 40 milliseconds. This method can also be done on audio tracks if you prefer to put your drums on those instead. And those of you who are eagle-eyed Ableton users, you can click this button here to show individual signal offsets for each track. Doing it this way allows you to shift signals later in time as well as ahead of time. However, since this is for the whole track, this won't really work for drum rack MIDI tracks, just like what I have right here. The red one has no signal offsetting, and the green one has various degrees of signal offsetting on each drum. Here's a quick before and after. This third technique is finger drumming or manual recording. Finger drumming or manually recording the MIDI sequence is the most human way to produce human sounding MIDI and sounds the most natural. And don't worry if you can't finger drum well or if you're not the greatest at recording in time. You can correct each note by using the quantize command and quantizing under 95%, or you can roughly correct each note just like what I did on the first technique, where you hold Alt to temporarily turn off the grid and shift your target notes closer to the grid. As I said before, you don't need to finger drum well, especially when it comes to recording more than one drum at once, because you can record your drum rhythms one at a time. There's no need to be perfect, because remember, the point is to sound imperfect, human and natural. And the perfection of life comes from embracing imperfection. Okay, so I know that wasn't perfect, but that's the entire point. You can hear at the very start of this loop, I start pretty fast, but near to the end of it, I start to slow down. So I'm going to compensate for this. I'm going to try and adjust these so they are close to what I want it to be, and perhaps shift some of these ahead a little bit, and some of these individually. I typically like to have my snares ahead of the beat, my hi-hats dragging away from the beat, and my kicks also ahead of the beat. Nice. I'll add some more layers by pressing this plus button up here, so that whenever I record on this MIDI clip, all the additional notes I'm pressing will be added on top of whatever is already existing. I pressed those rim knocks pretty late, so I'm going to shove these forward a bit. And I'll reduce the velocity so they're not too crazy. I want to see what other things I can add. Okay, let's shift these more again. Also, instead of recording directly on top of it, you can just play along with it and press this hollow square button in order to capture the MIDI that you just played. So if I do this, for example, as you can see, I haven't recorded anything yet, but by pressing this hollow square button, I can capture what I just played and mess around with it. If you feel like your recording is still a bit too sloppy, you can turn on the quantize menu by holding Control or Command Shift, then New, and then you can quantize to whichever note division you would like. I'll go for 8th and 8th note triplets. You can choose to adjust the start or the end of the note. I'll just do the start for now, and you can adjust the quantization amount. If you still want it to sound human, then I suggest going anywhere below 60%. I'll go for, let's say 16. I'll do it one more time by just doing Control U or Command U. So now that's sounding a bit tighter, whilst also still keeping that human feel. I'd like to give a big thanks to Lizard and iWrite for being my highest tier patrons. You're absolute legends. If you're interested in becoming a patron member and getting access to perks such as masterclasses, Patreon exclusive sample packs, shoutouts and more, check the links in the description below. And that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like and sub to buff my algorithm RNG, leave a comment if you have something to say, and maybe shout out to someone you would think would find this useful. You can further support me by checking out all my links in the description below. This includes my official website, my Discord, my Patreon, and other social medias. Once again, thanks a lot for watching, and stay creative. See you in a bit.